Oh, hello, hello. I wanted to welcome you guys to Table Talk today. And I have some special guests today with me, and I'm looking forward to having some great questions to come in. You can send questions to the chat area if you're on Google, or you can also send questions to us on the YouTube channel. And so I'm so excited. These two women are amazing. And this book, I'm telling you, every educator should have this book. Out of all the books that you have on your shelf, if you don't have this book, after we start talking about the book, why you should have it. And so I want to start off by asking both of them to, and I think we're having a little freezing up, and I'm so sorry, but bear with us and hang in there with us. But I want to go ahead and have Dr. Annita and Dr. Rene to introduce themselves. And whichever one of you wants to go first is fine with me, but I want the audience to hear a little bit about you. And I see Dr. Rene is pointing to Dr. Annita and wanting her to go
first. Of course.
So, right ahead.
Annita D'Amico, and I have been in the teaching field really all of my life, as well as doing a lot of coaching people's healthy lifestyles and different things, worked in a lot of different settings. Have lived overseas and worked with a lot of diverse students, students from different cultures, different languages, and here in the States, and different age groups. So I've had a very diverse career, which has just been awesome, and the opportunity to watch how people think and process and function in so many unique and marvelous ways. And I continue to just be fascinated about what an awesome brain we have.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Dr. Rene?
Well, I'm Rene Rochester, and I teach the high school cheering. Now, I've been teaching high school most of my career in education. I'm an adjunct professor at a couple of places, at Fuller Seminary. We've been at Huntington University. But I just love to teach. It's my passion, and my heartbeat is that people can understand, not just go take a class, not just be in school or be in an educational institution, but they can really have an understanding so that they can be productive. I love teaching. I love watching students get their aha moments. I love watching them feel successful or even progress their way to the place of success. It's fun watching students really build the bridges to understanding, and that's what this book has a lot to speak to, is how we can build bridges toward understanding when we know how different people learn and we speak to them in the venue of which they do learn. So for me, it's a win-win to be able to teach and then write about what I teach and then write about what I'd like to teach about and then teach what I wrote about. So I just enjoy teaching young people. I enjoy working with families and closing the loop so that parents can help their children learn better. Those are the things that make me smile. So
great, thank you so much. One of the things I want to ask you guys is, can you remember one incident where you were working with a student, and you know how we hear people say the light bulb went off? Just share one experience that you had with a student that you were working with them and you said they really have it. I see that they've just caught it. Dr. Rene?
Yeah. Well, I get to see that pretty much on a regular basis, which is fun, is that when we go over something, and sometimes one student will get it sooner than another, but a lot of times I've witnessed students that'll sit and a teacher might lecture or a teacher might be going over something and the students will nod and say, oh yeah, I got it. But you know they really don't have it until they can show you. I usually take a little ball and I'll throw it to them and I'll say, catch this, and they'll catch it. I said, you haven't learned what I've taught you until you've caught what I've taught. So what I usually do is when I watch them process and then they begin to work it out for themselves, when they can do it on their own and really see that they got the right answer, you can see the light sparkle, you see them give themselves a high five, or the guys, it's kind of funny, they'll go like that, you know, I got this. They get excited when they really know they've got an understanding. I think the tendency at times is for us to keep talking, keep lecturing, and not pausing long enough to see, if they did grab a hold of what we just shared. So sometimes I'll take segues, or I'll say, come up and show me what you thought I said, or what did you get from this, or I'll pause and say, what did you get? And sometimes it's quiet for a minute, and they'll be sheepish, and they'll go, well, could it be? And then they slowly raise their voice and say the answer. And then I'm like slinging a towel, like, yes, that's it. And they get excited that they got it right, because sometimes they really don't think they can, but when they do, there's great excitement.
Great. Dr. Annita?
I think one of the fun times was watching a young man. He'd actually been diagnosed with attention deficit disorder and several other things, and he really did not believe in his ability to strengthen his own brain and to learn things. And as we were walking through some different ways for him to do things, he all of a sudden got so excited, and he said, I get it. If I just do this, I'm actually teaching my brain how to walk through these problems. And it was so exciting because it was as powerful an emotional insight and aha for him as it was an academic aha for him. So it was awesome. And that was a turning point for him. He did not go backwards from that point on. He continued to he changed C's to B's and A's, and there was a strength in him. It was like there was a complete bridging of what he believed he could do from that point on.
Great. I love hearing those stories because all children are born and able to learn. All children are born and able to learn, and we just have to figure out their learning time, what works for them. And a lot of times it takes time to do that. We kind of it's based on the way we get it. And so we have to, as educators, we have to be careful not to do that and base strategy on the way children learn. So we're going to get right into the culturally wired brain. Tell me, how did you guys come up with this name, and why did you name it the culturally wired brain?
Yolanda, we have been teaching this for over 10 years. I know that you know some of that, having been connected with us.
Yes.
And we had been working with students, seeing students process information differently. So we kept looking at the different styles of really expressions of intelligence. All students are intelligent. It's the ways, some of the ways that it's expressed that are different, and the ways that they're able to acquire and process information. But we began to look at the tremendous power that culture had in it. And then we did the research, and the research shows that culture actually does wire the neurons in the brain for processing information and learning the different aspects of problem solving and how to follow pathways. And so we started getting so excited about the information. Every time we would do a group, we would build a brain with the group. We would take different scenarios and we would we would make the whole group. We'd have a frontal lobe part, we'd have a cognitive part, we'd have, all the different aspects of the brain, and we would walk problems through those individuals, and they would get so excited. And they kept telling us, they said, you have got to finish this book so we have something to take home with us, because we get some of the idea, but we need to study more. So it encouraged us to just continue with what we were seeing and what we knew was working with students and in our own lives and follow through.
I think the title, The Culturally Wired Brain, the whole idea is that everyone learns a little bit different, and we learn based on the culture which we've been reared. We process information based on how we've been reared. So culture actually does wire our brain and how we process information. And then we realize the brain is the brain is the brain. And some people process quicker than others, but it's helping each individual learn how to navigate through the terrain of their own neural pathways. So it's fun to be able to journey with somebody when they get there, as we said earlier, their aha moments, and when they really realize that their brain does have the capacity to learn. I think that's a powerful thing, because I've dealt with so many students, and I think the biggest piece for me is raising their self-efficacy, seeing them really believe that they can do something. Many students come into different environments where they're already labeled in a sense of, well, you're probably really going to struggle with this. But even if there is a struggle, one step is a step of progress, but helping them progress through to the place where they are saying, okay, I think I can do this. And then they're willing to work at it more. So the brain being wired by culture, we just thought, well, if it is wired by culture, why can't we call the book that? And I love the fact that, and Anita talks about this a little bit, we do one for the church as well, is that, the brain is like, a tree rooted in soil, and the soil is the terrain of where we have been reared and how we grow, and then we grow up into the knowledge of the things that we have to progress in. So, voila, thus the brain.
That is great. That's great. I love that. One of the questions that, and I've received this question from some educators as well, is what are you seeing that educators may be missing in children based on culture? You talked about young people should be taught, even adults should be taught based on culture. Tell me a little bit about what you mean by that. How do you teach based on culture?
Based on culture. All right, let me make this real practical for me. When a student comes into my class, and truth be told, I talked to one of my 7th grade math teachers. I went back to Massachusetts. Shout out to Massachusetts. Shout out to Brockton. But I went back home, or back east, not too long ago, and one thing he said to me, he says, Rene, I think we as educators need to realize that he's still teaching. He said that we're teaching students. We're not teaching a subject. We're teaching students.
That's good. Again, oh my goodness.
Wrote that in the book. And the whole idea, when you're teaching toward culture, it's believing that every student, no matter how they've been reared or what they've learned or haven't learned, they come to the table with something. They do come with some knowledge base. So it's finding out what they do come with, what they do know, and take the information they do know and bridge it to the new information we want them to grasp. I was doing an ACT prep yesterday for a group of students, and one of the things that I was telling them, I said, it's learning the language of the ACT test is what you need to do. I said, there's a way that it was designed, so we need to learn the language. Like a culture, you have to learn the language. Like if I said, yo tengo la victoria, if I had no knowledge of Spanish, I wouldn't know that I just said, or somebody said, you have the victory. So I find out what they know, and then we build on what they know. So they're coming in, they're bringing some of their cultured learning, and we pick up from where they are to carry them to the new information. I hope that made sense. That make sense?
Yes.
In the book, we have an example of talking that every journey and learning journey goes from a place of known to a place of unknown.
Right.
And so students are bringing to the table that place of their own known. I mean, they have huge banks of information. And sometimes those banks of information are really ignored or felt that they're not appropriate to what the new information is. But they're huge keys to tapping in to access of the new learning piece. And so that's a powerful piece of the cultural bridging. For example, there's been some studies done in Australia with Aborigine children, and they score 3 years ahead of the Caucasian Australian children in terms of visual perception and knowledge of the earth, because that's what they are involved in. So that's an anchoring place to take those children to the next level, rather than allowing the bias that they don't learn in more of a traditional sense, which then you get into all these social, emotional, linguistic pieces, which then tend to handicap the children of thinking they're not adequate and they don't have what it takes to come into really mastery learning.
Right. That's good, because I think a lot of times when we sit around a table and talk about education and what needs to change and what we feel like could be better, and when we start talking about children that are from impoverished areas,
right,
a lot of times we look at those children like they're not capable of learning instead of saying where are they starting from and what do we need to do to catch them up. I've been working in areas, and we would bring students in that may actually, when we test them, they're 2 years behind. But we test just to see where they are. We don't think that they can't catch up. We think that it's going to take a lot from the school, from the staff that's working with them during the after-school time. But we know we saw it within 1 year, depending on where they were, or 2 years, they were caught up because we found out their learning styles and we found out what they were missing, and we gave them double doses of that during their time with us. And so I want us to really, when we think of a child that's in an inner city, urban, impoverished area, to not necessarily look at them and say they can't learn, but look at them and say, what can we do to make sure that they're on the same playing ground as everybody else and receive what they need. And I know you've seen that as well. What is some things that you would tell us, a teacher just starting out that's working in an urban setting, what is some advice that you would give those teachers?
One thing, too, is what you were just talking about, impoverished. That's an interesting term, you know, that I think we've got to really, really be careful about, because the impoverished may mean that it is a lack of knowledge of some skills that we consider in the dominant mainstream society. But there are other skills, and we've talked already a little bit about this, but there are other skills that are not only adequate, but are above and beyond adequate. Every single child, Suzuki music, you know, the guy that started teaching young children to play violin at 3 years old.
Yes.
Part of the reason he began to do what he did, he's out of Japan and he's passed away now, but his music theory continues today. Part of the reason he did what he did was because he found that by 6 years of age, every single child that he met was fully functional in terms of their language. And he said, okay, if that's true, then we're not looking at gifts and talents. We're looking at what you offer a child to grow in them. Yes. And that's the same way with children who are from, quote, what we would describe as more of an impoverished area. They are already totally fluent in a dialect. They're totally fluent in the culture of their home. They're totally fluent in the culture of their community, and usually fluent in the community of their church. What they're missing are some of the other aspects that we would like for them to have that we think would make them more successful in, quote, mainstream society. And so just like you said, I love the way you put that. It's now how do we bridge those and let these children know, oh, no, you have an excellent mind. There is nothing wrong with what you're doing. There is nothing wrong with the way that you think and process. Now we're going to add to this. We're going to bridge these skills so that you are able to go to this level in this area. And, you know, once again, the research shows that by third grade, children are beginning to get discouraged. They begin to feel by third grade that they're not adequate for some of the things that they're experiencing in mainstream schools, which that breaks my heart, because they're totally adequate. It is just helping them scaffold learning and bridge the skills. Rene?
In the 6th chapter of the book, it's actually called A Vision for Education, and I really do talk to the teachers specifically, and I allude to some of my colleagues who've gone before us, like there's nothing new under the sun. The good book tells us that, and I give a shout out to Lisa Delpit, who's been delving in this area for a long time, and she wrote a book that really talked about other people's children, cultural conflict in the classroom. And one of the things that she brings out, and I have an opportunity on a daily basis, which has been fun for me but yet challenging, is being in an environment where we as teachers, we can come in, and the tendency for us is to teach the way we have been taught or teach the way we have learned. And the difference is when you have a diverse population and you have students that are coming in that some would think, well, they're coming in with not all the skills, and it's really not all the skills that it's not that they're lacking skills, that's the word that I want to say. They're lacking the skills of the things that we think that they need to do to be successful. I as a coach for many years, I talked about we're going to strengthen your strengths and we're going to work on your weaknesses. And I think the biggest piece is teacher expectation. When I let the student know what I expect for them in my class to be successful, and then I let them approach what they need to do based on what they know my expectations are. It's like in a math problem. There's usually more than one way to do a math problem. And when the student finds a way that they can get to the answer, having worked it out and become successful, who am I to say you can only do it this way? But if they can show me the work, they processed it, they understand it, let them take that journey and applaud them with where they've come. And I think that, like I said, the tendency for many of us, you know, and we have to check ourselves as educators is, am I teaching the way that I learn, or am I learning how my students learn to teach to the way that they learn and that they can be successful? And that takes just time getting to know who's in your classroom. So the first thing I would tell a new teacher teaching in an urban environment or a rural environment or another environment that we're not used to teaching in, or we have a mixed population, I find out who's in my room. What do they know? What do they bring to the table? And I try and fan the flame of what they know. I try and make that connection. I tell people, know not only the student, but know where they come from. Who are their parents? Get to know them so that we can work the circle together. So I hope that answered your question. Maybe.
That was so good. One of the things that you just said that I feel like is a big issue in the schools is that math problem that has to be done only one way. That frustrates me. I've heard even this past week from a parent, child has scored over the top on test when he's been tested, but because he didn't do this math the way that the teacher felt like he needed to do, he had the answer. But because he didn't get it the way she wanted him to get it, she said it was wrong. And I think we have to start as educators and those that are coming up with policies and whatever, we need to really start thinking about that. I realize my son struggled with that as well. I remember I took him to a Montessori school because we were thinking about doing Montessori when he was younger. And so he goes in, and you know in Montessori they want you to do things a certain way, and you can't go outside of that. In this school that he was going to visit, and the way they wanted him to do it, he looked at them, he said, that doesn't make sense. Why do I need to go 5 times when I can do it 2 times and have everything done?
Sure.
They were so frustrated with him. I knew that would not be the place for him, because I would be getting calls every day because he just felt like he said, Mom, they don't think. He said they wanted me to go 4 times to pick up those 4 things when I could take more than one at one time. I'm thinking, he's smart. But as educators and in the classroom, we're wanting them to learn it the way we want them to learn it, and if they can get it another way, we're not open to that. Yeah. And you just shared that, and that just frustrates me, and I don't know how we get past that.
I think, like I said, I being an educator, I know sometimes I come and I have expectation for my students, and if I find that the way they're doing it, if they tend to make constant mistakes, then I'm going to say, we need to show you a better way. But I let them show me what they perceive the way is to get the correct answer. And if it causes for mistakes, I shift them a little bit. But giving them an opportunity to demonstrate what they know is huge. I put in the book 3 things that I think would help. And I talk about with the cultural knowledge, you know, and I learned this, like I said, I want to pull on some of our other colleagues, but Appleby, and you can read this in the chapter when you get the book. Anyway, Appleby states some things that I think is really neat for us to know. It says he created a classroom with 3 significant attributes. First, attention to social organization, in which the teacher and learners have opportunities to communicate with one another, trust one another, and feel free to express opinions and feelings. You've got to give people an opportunity. I let my students know that they have value and their voice is important. Show me what you learned when you worked on this, because that's what education's about. It's about learning. You know, it's not just about getting a formative assessment. It's about What have they learned in the process here? One of the things that I say is what I do in my class. I set aside, time just on a regular basis for them to share what they understood. Okay, from that last section that we worked on, share with me what you get out of that. And I let them tell me. If they need tweaking, I tweak. It would be if they're working on their free throw shot and they don't bend their knees enough or they don't follow through, I want to help them get better. So I let them show me what they can do, and then we tweak it. The second thing is focus your teaching lessons built on prior knowledge and experience of the learners. They come with some knowledge to the table, and that is so huge for me, is I let them tell me what they think they know about something and not blast them and say, well, no, that's not the right answer. And I tell them, well, tell me what you know. And then we try and guide them. That's our job, is to guide them to, okay, that's good, but did you think about this? And then thirdly, give instructional methods that allow the student or the learner to actively participate in lessons and use language. And this one is huge for me because I have diverse population in my classes, social linguistic patterns of their own culture. I let them tell me how they would tell me if they were talking to somebody else. I said, okay, I get what you're saying, but now in here we want to use this kind of terminology to write better if we're going to do X, Y, and Z. So I don't just, mark them off that, well, that's not how we're going to do things here, but let them express and then help them to tweak to become the better writer, the better learner, or the stronger learner of what it is that you want them to be successful in. So there. Does that help?
We hear from teachers all the time, and teachers are awesome. I love teachers. I love it that they've committed their lives to doing this. Most individuals love kids. That's the reason they're teaching. And I know they feel beleaguered by all the issues and all the challenges, and they're like, how do we have time to do all of this? How do we have time to meet all these benchmarks and do all of this thing? But I think the one key point we can never shift from is that individuals are human beings, and we grow and develop in community. The classroom has got to be a community. It's got to be a community where the students feel cared for, that they have people who want them to dream dreams for their future, that they want them to be successful in their families. And getting back to that, of when you start a math lesson, say, what do I want to accomplish? What do I want to accomplish that this person will take with them, not only for today, but into the rest of their lives? And I think that question can be answered in a math lesson, a history lesson, or any other subject. And because really the pieces where the students were most successful were the students who felt like they had a relationship with their teachers,
Huge.
that there were high expectations, and that they were allowed to be involved in some sort of community.
Huge. Community is huge, and that we talk about that a lot in the book. And we also talk about the biases that we can bring sometimes as teachers and administrators into the learning environment. And that's where we have to grow and truly be a community. And that's a piece that we emphasize really throughout the book.
Right. One of the things that I was reading through, I haven't finished the entire book, but it's been so good. I'm gonna buy some and just give them out to educators, and I've been sharing it all on my social media. And one of the things that you guys in chapter 5, you discuss bridging and anchoring. Talk to us a little bit about importance of bridging and anchoring.
Well, we've touched on that a little bit, of looking at what's already in the child, what the child already has. Jerome Bruner, an educator, that he's in his 90s now, but as he talked about, he said we can never move past from education making meaning. It's that students need to know why they're learning what they're learning, and why it's important, and how it connects to their lives. That is some of that bridging and anchoring piece, is allowing this to be useful information and connect to their lives. We use Rene uses a lot of action learning principles, which are real powerful. That means that the brain has got to walk through stuff. It's almost like our brain has feet. It has got to walk through issues to be able to think and process and deal with stuff, understand. I mean, and all you're get an understanding. The brain has to have some sort of understanding. So it's allowing not only action learning does P, which is programmed learning, with questioning and analysis. And the whole piece is the whole program piece, which are textbooks, is yesterday's stuff. But questioning, the student allowing to process and delve in and explore, that's brand new, that's exciting, that's creative, that's innovative. So those two pieces have to be combined for learning to happen and for learning to be anchored inside the brain.
What's so powerful about what she said about the processing and learning, you know, and there really is nothing new under the sun. When Hebrew children would grow and then they would learn, you know, when you read, if you read the scriptures, you read about a man named Jesus who he was found in the temple amazing the rabbis. And what he was doing is what we call madrashing in the temple. And when they madrash, the rabbi would say one thing, he would answer and then take it to the next level by posing question. Well, Rabbi, do you think it's this? And dialogue and community would be going on with the learning. I was telling a parent today, in fact, in my office about, she was talking with me about her daughter, and I was talking about anchoring. And we talk in my class about how the brain learns. And I tell my students, you know, when we process through something, the signals in the neuron of, that's the nerve cell of the brain, when that signal's strong, the terminals look like my little fingers here. The stronger my signal, because I was able to process, the more I can anchor or hold on to the information. And when we don't give kids an opportunity to process and to dialogue and to discuss, we don't have that strong of a signal, thus we can't hold on to the new information. A real powerful thing, and that's why Solomon talks about, in all you're getting, get an understanding. Because you're getting, it's present progressive tense. We go over it this way, then we went over it that way, and now I can hold on to the information.
That's so good. Oh my goodness. One of the things that I think happens a lot of times in the classroom, and I think even when we're teaching young people or we're teaching adults, is that a lot of times we hate silence. So we'll put something out there, and if no one responds immediately, we're like, oh, no, people are processing. So a lot of times we don't give them the opportunity to process, and we want to jump in and give the answer because we feel like it's really us. It's like we're the ones that's like uncomfortable. Right. With listening, waiting for that answer. So that was so good.
Yes, because teachers tend to talk 80% of the time.
Wow.
And very little time for the students to be able to respond and interact.
I was one of those, I confess, but I've learned over the years. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Exactly. We're all in a learning process, and with technology and everything. When we were in school, I mean, some of the tech kids have now, we had no idea about it, and so as well as when we're up lecturing, to be able to, we also need to also include the technology. What's your thoughts on technology in the classroom?
I use technology quite a bit, and because that's the world that my students are in. Periodically, you know, in most schools, you know, they don't allow the students to have their phones or whatnot, and we don't allow them to have it on their person unless the teacher gives permission. But there'll be times where we'll be talking about something that's common day, like today we were talking about, you know, what happens, you know, with the brain, you know, if the neurons are damaged, and we went common day. I said, okay, what happened in the news yesterday? What came out with an athlete? And they began to dialogue. I said, all right, somebody pull out your phone, look this up. All right, you look this up. Because that's the world that they're in. Now you have to use discretion and wisdom. And some schools, what you can do, you shut off the certain social media sites so that they can't even log on to it while they're in your classroom. But if that's where they are and that's the world that they're in, let's find ways that we can use the technology and to the best interest of their learning, because I love the fact that I can go say, I need you to go watch this TED Talk,
Yes.
and tomorrow we'll dialogue about it.
Exactly.
Technology is not going away. And
No.
my opinion, I think we've got to learn to use it and use it positively. And there's now research going on, and several small colleges have now researched that actually texting students study tools cause those students to do better on the test because they were having an opportunity really interface with the professor when they were not with them. One of the things too that I have found is our youth, people think they're very tech savvy. In all honesty, they're only savvy with what type of technology they use.
Right.
And so we have found that, we have to actually help students teach them how to use search engines, what information is valuable, what information is just repeat information from another site and doesn't have any research base. And so it's another opportunity to help them learn and deepen and grow.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about parents. With your book, how do you think this book would be a great tool for parents?
Well, we actually have a chapter on family, spirituality, and community.
Yes.
And for me, I really feel it's great because a lot of parents, Anita and I talk about this often, sometimes parents don't know what to help their child with because they were intimidated by their own learning. So sometimes helping to eliminate that fear and then giving parents tools and ways that they can assist their child. Like one of the things that I do with the students that I work with, we have a late night study hall here, and I will, if a student is working on something and they need to be quizzed on it or they need to review it, I will send a worksheet home with them or even email it to the parent with the answers and say, this is something that you can review or go over or quiz your child on. Or the door being open for them to come and see me, and we ask, they'll ask me and they'll say, what are some ways that I can help? And I think it's my job to be able to help them to help their child. So there are a lot of ways that the book will speak. In fact, I give some steps and things that you can do to be more involved, especially at the high school level. Like at elementary school, parents are usually very engaged in their students' lives, and then when you get to middle school, high school, there tends to be a backing away, and a lot of that is because the child wants their own independence. But what we are finding that, the teenage brain is real unique, and they do still need guidance, and some students need you to walk them, step by step. So helping the parents, number one, be encouraged in ways that they can help, that they don't have to be a rocket scientist to help their student with science. They just need a tool that we as teachers can help them with, like, this is something that you can review. We're doing this tomorrow, and so, Robin is a little bit behind on this. Maybe you can go over this with them. And if they don't have time, we can dialogue with the parent about what we can do to make sure that the student's getting what they need if the parent doesn't have the time to do it. Some parents work late night jobs or two jobs, and so we have to find some other ways to build that, like we used the term earlier, community. What community can come and wrap around that child? The church, tutoring programs, after school, late night study hall, whatever. Sometimes we have to fill the gap if the parent has another job or something and they can't be there, or they might not feel the confidence yet. That's why we have to build a community around the parent and the child so that we can all do it together.
When we were writing the book, we were so convinced that we needed to make it also reader-friendly for parents, so that they could look at the chapter that's on the brain and be able to actually understand some of the basics, that it wasn't so scientific, that it didn't make any sense. And I think one of the ways this could really be helpful is for a group of parents to get together, go through this book, and look at the ways, because parents are fearful of helping their children, not being able to be I guess, wise enough to be able to negotiate them through some of the academic challenges, because they feel that they're learning different subjects than they learned in school. And I have so many parents who say, well, my child is weak in math, just like I'm weak in math. And I'm like, no, don't go there. There is no reason for your child to struggle here. And so that they would be encouraged, that they would find tools and strategies, that they would come in groups and encourage one another to be able to come alongside their students and talk to these teachers.
That's the piece I think we as teachers and schools, we have to make it a welcoming environment for the parent, that we want them to come, and what can we do to serve you? You know, like sometimes the parent might say, you know, I know my son is struggling right now and I don't know how to help him. Can we talk about this? And that's where we've got to build that piece together. A lot of times we don't see what the parent sees when the student comes home. I've had a couple parents tell me, like, you know, my son, when he gets home, he just cries because he's so frustrated. And see, we as teachers sometimes might not see that side of it, because when they're in class with us, it's like, yeah, I got this, because they're afraid to say that they don't have it, and then they go home and they're like, head buster. And I think when we invite or make it welcoming for the parent, share with us, you know, is there anything we can do to serve you as you serve your child? So that's why I think that community piece is so important. It's not just, hey, get the parent over to the school so we can, you know, let them know we are parent friendly and we're going to have a cookout or we're going to have this. But sometimes it's when they get home and the child's struggling and they don't know what to do. You know, that's where I think parent community, like parents coming together with one another. You know, I tell so-and-so, you know what, your son is doing the same thing that Miss Smith's son's doing. And don't you two know each other? Okay, well, maybe we can get together, and I think that is going to be a beautiful piece. And that's one way that the church, too, can get involved. I'm looking forward to doing some things with churches to have parent nights where we can just encourage the parents on these are some ways that we can get together and really just have a parent support group. Like some parents is like, oh, my child, if I could just get him through high school, you know. And but sometimes they just need each other.
Yes.
We need to one another, and that's a big piece. Right. I know we've gone over your time, but you know, this is good. It's good.
We're right on time. We're right on time. You talked about the church and the faith-based community, and I agree with you that there's a critical part that the church can be playing in the space of education and in parent engagement. Talk about a little bit of the work that you guys have been doing, not just with churches, but just with schools and organizations, so that those that are viewing can get an idea of kind of what things you can come and do for them.
Okay. Well, I've done much. We've done much with, I do a lot of ACT prep, and then visiting and doing the ACT prep, like for some of not only the public schools, but the private schools. I've been out to, in the Nashville area, I've been out at Maplewood, and we run a ACT prep there, usually collaborating with the Urban League. The other thing is doing teacher training. That is one of the things that's where we sing the most, is doing teacher training. And we've been to Michigan, and we had a fabulous time there in the public school district. It was in, it was outside of Kalamazoo, but what is the city that we went to? It wasn't Kalamazoo. I'll think of it in a second, but we had a retired principal who actually came back to the school district. They pulled him out of retirement, brought him back really to clean up the environment of the school, bless his heart. And we did a teacher training. He came, we did it at his high school, and I mean the auditorium was pretty much full. And the opportunity really to listen to me, I'm an educator. No, the opportunity to really encourage teachers. Sometimes teachers just need to be encouraged and fan the flame, you know, in their hearts, and give them some tools and ways that they can be refreshed, and ways that they can look at things a little bit different. So teacher training is a big part that we do.
Yes.
Parent workshops are a joy. ACT prep, testing. My big thing personally is teaching toward understanding. How do you design lessons so that kids get an understanding of the lesson, not just, okay, we went through a lesson, but how do I identify that they are understanding? So learning, understanding. So I could give titles of workshops, but really our heart is to empower the empowerers. Mm-hmm. How can we empower the parents? How can we empower the teachers? And how can we empower the youth workers to better serve the young people that they've been called to serve?
Because as Rene just said, we've been brought out for several workshops. We've even been brought out by some churches to do workshops for teachers and parents, which really worked out well. You know, and we talk about the code switching and the different cultural bases that can end up being communication blocks between students and teachers and faculty, and then between faculty and faculty, where that you begin to, you misinterpret. We have one whole section that looks at microaggressions in the book, where that, without even knowing sometimes, we begin to offend one another and close the communication gates. And so it was, some of the opportunities we have been fabulous. If we've had principals and teachers give us actual scenarios, and we have walked them through different ways to approach it, different ways to deal with the student besides just kicking them out of school, allowing the cool down, the code switch time, the brain time to be able to adjust, to be able to communicate different values. Those sociolinguistics are huge. You know, the way that you perceive someone is respecting or disrespecting you by their actions. And it is so much fun, because after we finish, the individuals, the adults are going, wow, I had no idea. And so it's just so much fun.
As we started out, again, the title of The Culturally Wired Brain, the cultural linguistics is a huge piece when we talk about the ability of whether a student reads well or not. A lot of times they don't hear the dialect of the text that they're reading in school, because the culture or community they grew up in doesn't speak that dialect. And I was in a meeting where a comment was made. It's almost as though they're bilingual in how they were tested. And I said, could it be cultural linguistics? You know, they haven't heard the type of language that they're reading in the book on a regular basis. So they write how they've learned in their thinking to hear something. They write what they hear rather than what they just read that one time in the text. So sometimes you have to work with them with what they bring, like we said earlier, what they bring to the table. But when you grow up hearing a certain word a certain way, you tend to write it that way until you've been convinced or grown or learned to write another way. So it's a process. It's a process.
Right. So I want you guys to, I'm loving this. This has been so good. The culturally wired brain. And you guys, those that are watching and those that will watch later, you can pick I'm going to have them share where you can pick a copy up from and how you can contact them, because I really believe that as we begin to really look at how the brain is wired and how kids learn, and not just continue to teach based on the way we receive it, but looking at, like Dr. Rene said, looking at who's in your classroom, who's in your audience, and teaching based on that, I think we're going to see kids just soar and be what's already in them. It's not like we're trying to find something that we're not sure that's in them. It's there, and it's in this opportunity to be able to help them reach their fullest potential, because like I said earlier, all kids are born and can learn.
Yes.
And we have to always remember that whether they're a child from a rural area, they're a child from an urban area, from a continent of Africa. I remember being in the continent of Africa a couple of years ago, and I go into this village area and walk into this school with a dirt floor, and it's looked like first, second, maybe third graders, and I look up on the board and they're doing high-level math. So it's not about poverty. It's not about where you live. When you're exposed to those opportunities to learn something new, the kids soak it up. We just have to offer the opportunity for them to be able to do that. And so would you guys tell the people where they can get a copy of your book and how they can reach you?
Yes.
The easiest way, if you want to do it quickly, you can do it online through Redemption Press. Redemption Press, and I believe it's redemptionpress.com. And you can type in our name, the author's name. You can order it right online. There's also an ebook, so you can go to Kindle, Barnes & Noble, and get the ebook. And November 21st, if you live in the Cool Springs area, at 1 o'clock Saturday afternoon, we'll be doing a book signing at Barnes & Noble.
Great.
Yay! Anyway, so that's the best way that you can get the book.
And can you put our emails on your site, Yolanda?
Yes.
Because we would love to hear from people.
Yes, I will definitely put your contact information on my site. I will send it out to the ones that were invited, and also the website where they can get the book.
Yes.
And I will send me some information about your book signing, especially for those that are local, because I would love to see many educators come out. And also reach them at their website. I will post that on my site as well. But if you guys want to give your website on if there's a school system, if there is a parent group or church that would like to have you come and speak, let us know where they can contact you guys at.
Yes, and they can contact us at fatstarlearning.com, PHAT learning.com, and you can reach either one of us there. Annita at fatstarlearning.com, or Dr. Annita at fatstarlearning.com, or Dr. Rene at fatstarlearning.com. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to be able to serve you. This has been fun. Thank you, Yolanda.
It's fun.
As we close out, I just want to have you both just leave us one inspirational quote or just a suggestion to educators out there before we close the show out. But first I want to just thank you for joining me tonight. This has been great. I think it's really important for us to continue to dialogue about education and what's best for our young people, but also, as you guys mentioned, is refreshing and encouraging the educators and the youth development workers that are working with young people. Because without them, this work doesn't get done, but we can't forget them, and we can't forget to continue to encourage and refresh them as they continue to do the work that they're doing. So as we close out, just leave us with one thing that you would share with an educator or a parent as we close.
Well, one quote that we have listed in the book that I love, and it says that education is not the filling of a bucket, but the lighting of a fire.
Good.
And that's what it is with these young people today.
Good.
Yes, that's good.
I believe that is so true, and I have said this numerous times to my classes over the years that, you know, when you know who's in your classroom and you believe in the potential that's in them, you can count the number of seeds in an apple, but you can never count the number of apples in a seed. So keep sowing. Keep sowing. Keep loving them, keep serving them, keep teaching them, and you don't grow weary in well-doing. You're going to reap in due season. I've been teaching over 30 years, and I read things from students now that blow my mind that I taught 25 years ago. So you never know what God will do with that little bit of seed. So keep loving those students. Keep getting to know those students. Keep reaching them to teach them.
That's right.
Great. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. This is Table Talk with Yolanda and with Dr. Rene and Dr. Annita with the Culturally Wired Brain. Pick that book up today. Go to I will post on my site where you can get the book. And hold that book up, Rene. Yeah, pick that book up this week, because you will not want to put it down once you get it. So thank you guys for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Yolanda.
Thank you. Next time, this is Table Talk with Yolanda. Good night.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.